Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Grigori Grabovoi, guy from Russia that I'd never heard of until my wife mentioned him to me. Well, there's nothing like computer problems to make the show so fun to work on. I was about half done with my show notes when the driver on my computer decided it was time to act up. The screen goes all wonky and lines appear all over the place. Then it goes black. A real quick fix is to hold the power button for just a second or two. The driver magically pops back into operation. Well, this works 9 out of 10 times. On occasion, when I'm working with the computer, it'll just shut down and then start back up. When this happens, everything goes back to normal, but I lose whatever I hadn't saved yet. As the computer was coming back on, I realized I hadn't saved my notes. I was just one of those things I hadn't thought about until it was too late. My computer came back up and I tried searching for the show notes, but I found nothing. This really added to an already off day. I decided to start all over from the beginning. I opened my Word doc and I got the fresh page ready to go when a little window showed up asking if I wanted to reopen the document I was working on. There were my show notes, all still the way I just viewed them a few minutes ago. It saved me about 5 or 6 hours of work. Some of you will probably go, well, duh, that's how it works. Others might just go, wow, I can finally find those documents I've lost. The moral of the story is, save your work as soon as possible. I usually do this, but I got kind of carried away while working on the show and I forgot to save it. With all the madness going on around the world, my wife was reading on one of the groups she follows that there was going to be a 3-day internet outage, so the shadow government could implement some new things to control the masses. I got up Monday morning and guess what? No internet. No cable or phone either. I am very big into conspiracies and, well, this kind of got me a little paranoid. I don't fall into all of them, but there are quite a few I do believe in. Oswald did not shoot JFK. The CIA was planning to kill Americans to further their agenda. Aliens are here, and they just might be running things. So whether or not Big Brother shut down the internet so they could unleash some new and terrible control methods on us has yet to be proven or disproven. My wife Lourdes suggested this show. She had heard some strange things about this man on the internet and asked me to look into it. Well, okay, here is what I could find. Grigori was born November 14th, 1963 in Shymkent, Kazakhstan. He's a Russian doctor of mathematics. That's a PhD, not doctor. In 2008, he was convicted of fraud. However, he was released from prison when a group of Russian advocates, including Mikhail Tepashkin, boy, I wish these Russians would spell their names in English. Anyway, Tepashkin brought an action to institute criminal proceedings against Vladimir Putin and President Medvedev. in front of the United Nations, the Hague Tribunal, the International Criminal Courts for having affected Grigori Grabovoi's criminal prosecution. The folks who convicted Grigori were threatened with being taken to court, so the conviction was overturned. Being convicted sounds pretty bad, until you consider Nelson Mandela was convicted of treason, and he spent from 1964 until 1982 in prison. I'll get to Grigori's conviction in a bit, but first, his history. In 1986, Grigori graduated from the Faculty of Applied Mathematics and Mechanics of the Tashkent State University, majoring in mechanics. After graduating from the university, Grigori Grabovoi worked at the Design Bureau of the city of Tashkent, that was a subsidiary of the Moscow Ministry of Mechanical Engineering, which was engaged in developing and testing space technology. 1991 and 92, Grigori managed to do something extraordinary. He made 360 predictions on the coming years of the aircraft fleet, and after 2 years he was 100% correct. I couldn't find any account of what he said was going to happen, or whether or not he said anything bad was going to happen, but he did have the blessing of the National Airlines of Uzbekistan. Grigori's website is written in English, but you have to kind of interpret some of the wording. Things don't translate that well when there are out-of-the-ordinary references. Some Russian concepts can be translated into English, but the words used have to be carefully defined. Other words, you wind up with a very difficult read. I tried to put this into something understandable, but I could only do so much. From January 7th, 1993 to September 1st, 1993, Grigori worked on he worked as an expert in the Center of Information and Computing Services of the National Airlines of the Republic of Uzbekistan. They sure love those long, protracted names of companies over there. He continued to use his extrasensory diagnostics. He diagnosed a bunch of airplanes and how they will do over the years. He was 100% correct in doing so. In 1994, Grigori traveled to India to visit the Chhatarpur Temple. The Chhatarpur Temple is located in the outskirts of southwestern Delhi and is the second largest temple in India. Sri Sant Baba Nagbal Ji blessed Grigori, saying he would pray for him, and predicted that Grigori would use his high energy and psychic abilities for the benefit of people, not only in his home country, but all around the world. The same year, a famous healer, forecaster, and clairvoyant going by the name of Lebeau expressed conviction that with such abilities, Grigori was obliged to assist not only his country, but also the entire planet. October 27, 1995, the Bulgarian seer Baba Vanga met with Grigori, and after their conversation, Vanga said, within 20 years, Grigori would achieve everything he had planned. These plans included nuclear and environmental safety on the planet, human life extension, and an end to dying. Vanga expressed her belief that Grigori Grabovoi was on the right path, and he should continue expanding his knowledge and abilities to the betterment of all mankind. The title Baba means a holy man or spiritual leader. Well, a holy woman in Vanga's case. From 1995 until 1997, Grigori cooperated with the Control Center of Space Flights of the Russian Federation, helping to solve successfully the emerging problems aboard the spaceship in diagnostics of the space station Mir. Grigori accurately determined the locations of breaks in the thermal insulation in the outer covering of the space station while he was sitting here on Earth. The astronauts went out and looked, and they were surprised to find that it was exactly the way he had described it. This prevented an emergency that could have occurred due to a planned afterburner load on the onboard engines. Grabovoi insisted that such actions were not recommended until the elimination of the indicated defects. Could these defects have led to a disaster? Well, think about the Columbia. The outer insulation was damaged on launch, but the problem didn't show up until re-entry, and it was not a good outcome. There's another example of Grigori's work on diagnosing space technology. He made a diagnosis of the engines of the Space Shuttle Atlanta. He gave Control Center a technical description of what was wrong with the engines that needed correcting. The astronauts checked the engines and found out that Grigori was right. They made the needed corrections and were able to continue their mission. At the time of the diagnosis, Grigori was standing outside his home in Kazakhstan, talking on his cell phone. It is said Grigori Grabovoi created a new science. The science he created was called a fundamentally new area of knowledge, affirming the way of development in continuing compliance with the laws of creative development of the world. Like I said, the website was written in Russian and translated to English. December 19th, 1997, the International Registration Chamber of Informational Intellectual Novelty issued certificates and licenses to Grigori Grabovoi. When I read this, I had to look it up. The International Registration Chamber issues a document, a license, that entitles the owner to use their information in international markets of all countries of the world. It's a form of copyright that is put down on paper. If I have an idea and I write it down, say I write a book, I own the story, whether I ask for copyright or not. The same goes for artwork and photographs. What some people don't know is when it comes to photographs, the person in the photo has no right to the image. The person taking the photograph owns the image. If that person who owns the photograph wants, he can sell that image and use it for anything he wishes. If you put an image on Facebook, it becomes public domain. You can try to get copywritten, but you're probably not going to get it. You put it out there for the world to see, and now the world owns it. The International Registration Chamber created a record of your ideas and documents them, so if somebody tries to steal your ideas, you have proof of when you came up with the idea. The license was for computer technology distant control. This technology was designed to make it possible to use computers all over the planet all at one time. I don't much care for having anybody controlling my computer. It's mine. I paid for it. It cost a lot. If I have computer problems, I hate having to go see the experts to get it fixed. When I accidentally spilled a cup of coffee on my keyboard, I was dumbfounded. The solution for a lot of folks would be to run to the computer store and have them fix whatever was fried. Instead, I bought a new keyboard. I watched a few YouTube videos on how to disconnect and reconnect a keyboard. I have a Hewlett-Packard Envy. The keyboard is not screwed in. It's riveted using about 50 little plastic rivets. Well, surprisingly, I got my computer back up and running. I did lose one USB connection from the coffee soaking. Now, coffee does not make your computer work faster. Grigori also received a license for the model the archiving in any point of space and time. I looked this up, but not sure I understood it. Information areas are discovered which define properties and locations of any information items, leading to self-development of non-destructible areas of creative activity, and define particular technologies of non-destructive use of the creative areas. Well, like I said, I read it, but I don't really understand it. However, Grigori received a certificate for his work. Over the next few years, Grigori Grabovoi received dozens of awards and certificates for his achievements. A lot of these were from international organizations. January 24th, 1998, Grigori was awarded the title the Best Healer in Bioenergetic Informatics. Good Lord, what's going on here? Best Healer in Bioenergetic Informatics and Forecasting. I think some of these words aren't what they think they mean, but Russian to English, like I said. Best Healer is not like being a physician. A physician uses mainstream medicine and ideas to hopefully fix whatever's wrong with you. Healers use other methods. There are energy healers who use what, for all intents and purposes, looks like magic. The idea is to focus energy that is all around us into the patient to help their body heal. I say this works because I've had some experience with it. March 9th, 1998, the Russian Academy of National Sciences, based on its charter, elected Grigori a full membership in the section of Noosphere Knowledge and Technologies. A noosphere is a postulated sphere or stage of evolutionary development dominated by consciousness, the mind, and interpretational relationships. The noosphere as a new state of the biosphere and described as a planetary sphere of reason. Think of it like the atmosphere around the planet. You've got the sphere, the planet. Then you've got the atmosphere that goes completely around the sphere of the planet. The noosphere is a conscious waveform that encircles the planet, and some people are able to tap into this to gain knowledge. June 10th, 1998, Grigori was elected a full member of the International Information Academy, the associated members of the United Nations in general consultative status with Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. Like I said, they just love those long, protracted names of organizations. The 3 words in a name are about right. CIA, FBI. You get more than that and it just gets hard to pronounce. The PDQ of the SPA. Too many letters. Anyway, August 10th, 1998, the Italian Academy of Economic and Social Development awarded Grigori the title of Academician as a sign of the highest expression of official recognition of his eminent virtues, high moral qualities, constant execution of his civil duties, and following the most noble ideas, which gave him full rights to take a worthy place in society. Good Lord, this sounds like quite an honor. It does remind me of a few awards ceremonies I've attended. In the audience, not on the stage. Some folks like to pile on the accolades high and wide. They like to use fancy descriptives that sound really wow, but amount to simply saying, "This guy is good." It sounds a bit like a Terry Pratchett or Douglas Adams book. In August 1998, the New York Academy of Sciences elected Grigori Grabovoi a full member of the Academy. September 15th, 1998, the Russian Academy of National Sciences awarded Grigori the Silver Medal for the development of medicine and health care. October 1998, he received the diploma of the Order of Malta. This diploma is given for upholding human dignity and caring for people in need. The Sovereign Order of Malta is one of the oldest institutions of Western and Christian civilization. October 1998, the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences awarded Grigori the scientific degree of Doctor of Russian Academy of Natural Sciences. So he is Dr. Grabovoi. November 20th, 1998, Grigori Grabovoi received a certificate of membership in the Professional Psychotherapeutical League, a professional association with organizations' significant professional activities since 1998. It unites all those who are engaged or training in psychotherapy. The list of his awards and accolades went on for 8 pages. I don't think you'll need to hear all of them. If you want to read the entire list, you can find them at grabovoi-grigori.us/diploma. If you can read Russian, you can go over all of his diplomas and awards. If not, they are translated into English as well. It basically sounds as if Grigori was a humanitarian. He was looking to right wrongs throughout the world. His main attention became focused in Russia since that was where he was living. You start at home and work outwards. September 1st, 2004 was the traditional start of the Russian school year. They refer to it as the first bell or Knowledge Day. In a small town named Beslin, Russia, the children were accompanied by their parents and other relatives to attend ceremonies hosted by their school. Because of the Knowledge Day festivities, the numbers of people in the school was considerably higher than on a normal school day. Early in the morning, a group of a couple dozen heavily armed Islamic nationalist guerrillas entered the school and took everybody hostage. Records indicate there were about 1,100 hostages and maybe 32 or 34 terrorists. The terrorists wore green military camouflage and black balaclava masks. In some cases, they were wearing explosive belts and explosive underwear. Explosive underwear? Think about that for a bit. If you're dressed in a military uniform and waving a rifle around and you have explosives, what possible use could there be to have explosive underwear? The only reason I could come up with was they were planning to possibly be arrested by the Russian government and they wanted to kill anybody that captured them. After gathering all the hostages in the gym, the attackers singled out 15 to 20 of the strongest-looking male teachers and parents. Anybody that looked as if they just might try to overthrow the terrorists. These men were herded into a corridor next to the cafeteria on the second floor. Once out of the vicinity of the cafeteria, a bomb vest was detonated by remote control. Most of the hostages in the hallway and 3 terrorists were killed. The survivors were shot by other terrorists. It has been theorized the leader of the terrorists set off the explosive by remote control. He had selected the terrorists due to their lack of dedication in taking children hostage. What kind of nasty people would do such a thing? Those who are convinced any means is acceptable as long as the outcome is in their favor. There are thousands of people all over the planet who think along these lines. We see examples of them every day, if you know where to look. A security cordon was soon set up around the school, consisting of Russian police, international troops, Russian armed forces, the Spetsnaz, and the Oman special units of the Russian Ministry of Internal Affairs. There were over 5,000 people, all running around with guns, looking to save the hostages. I can see a problem from here, sitting in my air-conditioned office, looking back with 20/20 hindsight. Military, law enforcement, and civilians, all mixed into one big pile. Relatives of the children being held outside running around with guns. People get a bit anxious when kids are in danger. Who is in control and how do they keep control of an out-of-control situation? Been there, done that. I was at one hostage situation where we had everyone with a gun and a badge gathered around. Fortunately, the sheriff was in charge and everybody knew it. I was busy doing medical things, so I didn't see much of what was going on. I ran out of IV fluids, which is hard to do if you're me. I usually used to keep, a case of fluids in my unit. Most folks had 3 or 4 bags, but I was always looking out for the next disaster. The sheriff did a good job, and I say that because nobody got killed. The only ones going to the hospital were from heat exhaustion. Well, at the school in Russia, a line of 3 apartment buildings facing the school gym were evacuated and taken over by special forces, who set up snipers and observers in any windows that they could. They also had grenade launchers set up in range of the school. A sniper is trained to take out the enemy with the least amount of collateral damage possible. A grenade has no such qualms. The one thing missing was emergency equipment. Ambulances and firefighting vehicles. If you're firing grenades into a school filled with kids, you're going to need medics and a lot of them. Somebody should have remembered the Moscow theater hostage crisis. October 23, 2002, Grabovoi, not even going to try it. A theater was taken over by 40 to 50 armed Chechens. They had 850 hostages when they ended up with the death of at least 170 people. After 3 days of standoff, the army pumped an aerosol anesthetic gas into the theater. The gas put many hostages and some of the terrorists to sleep. It then took about 2 hours of shooting to kill off the terrorists who were wearing gas masks. I know they're not really gas masks, they're protective masks. The difference is a protective mask protects you from chemicals using filters, whereas a gas mask protects you from everything using compressed air. An anesthetic chemical will depress your nervous system. If depressed too much, you stop breathing. Some of the hostages stopped breathing and there was no medical treatment for 2 hours. I can't really fault the army for what they did. In a situation like this, you do what you can and you pray for the best. There should have been some emergency medical personnel on hand, but there weren't nearly enough. At the school, 2 years later, somebody should have said, "Send us as many emergency medics as you can." But they didn't. Learn from others' mistakes, or you will make your own. And on that unhappy note, I am going to take a brief pause and play some commercials and drink some coffee, so don't go away. I'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Did you hear a bump in the night and you think it just might be a ghost? Contact the Laredo Paranormal Research Society at laredoparanormal@hotmail.com. That's the LPRS for all your otherworldly needs. Coffee, nectar of the gods. And at the Organic Man Coffee Trike, you'll find coffee made the right way, one delicious cup at a time. Stop on by 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. And remember, life is too short to drink bad coffee. Did you go out UFO hunting and couldn't focus on the sky? Swing on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle Del Norte, right across from the Embassy Suites. Now, that's not a weather balloon, that's a flying saucer. Are you taking care of your skin, or are you going to wait and see how time treats you? Take care today by contacting Lourdes James, Independent Beauty Consultant, at 956-723-3019. Don't let time get the best of you. This is Arkanasa Radio you've been listening to. And welcome back to the show. Now back to the school in Russia. On the third day at about 1300 hours, or 1 p.m., September 3rd, 2004, it was agreed to allow 4 emergency medical workers in 2 ambulances to remove 20 bodies from the school grounds. At 13:03, 3 minutes later, when the paramedics approached the school, there was an explosion inside the gym. The terrorists opened fire on the medics, killing 2 of them. The other 2 took cover behind their vehicle. Soon, there was a second explosion in the sports hall, where the hostages had been moved. The roof collapsed and killed about 160 people inside. If you could imagine the confusion as soldiers, police, and relatives all converged on the building that was still on fire. Terrorists started shooting at everyone. By the end of the day, 333 hostages were dead. Who's to blame? If you take somebody hostage and that person gets injured or killed, the blame is all yours. Either 30 or 31 terrorists were killed. Some will say there were more dead, while others say there were less. If you search long enough, you can find all manner of confusing information. The point is, there were lots of dead folks, all from the same small town. 35,000 people called Beslan home. Everybody in the town would either know somebody killed or even have been related to one or more. Whole families were inside the building when the explosion took place. People wanted to blame somebody who wasn't already dead, and many turned their attention towards Moscow. Stories began to circulate that the terrorists were about to release the hostages. I doubt this was true, but I'm basing my assumption on what I could find 16 years after the crisis. Some folks decided that had Vladimir Putin not been so strict, the terrorists wouldn't have been motivated to take hostages. Terrorists don't react to what's going on around them. They go looking for a reason to kill people. September 2004, Grigori Grabovoi had declared his intentions to fund a political party based on humanity. He said he would be the candidate running for position of President of Russia by 2008. Soon after his declaration, leading Russian mass media started slandering him. They began a campaign against him. TV, newspapers, and radios all began putting out information, most of which was false. In Russia, everything you hear is what the government wants you to hear. The United States, we used to have something called freedom of the press, but with all the political correctness and pressure from globalists, we're getting less and less actual news and more opinion. The U.S. is beginning to look more like Russia every day. If I say JFK was not killed by Lee Harvey Oswald, why would you believe me? I'm just one guy saying what I believe. If, on the other hand, I say, based on the books I've read, from Crossfire by Jim Marrs to Impossible, the case against Lee Harvey Oswald by Barry Krush, as well as all the news articles, documentaries, and interviews I've read and seen, then what I say has a little bit more weight. Only if you go and read, watch, and listen to all the same information. You have to do some research if you want to know. It's a bad idea to believe somebody simply because they say they know what's going on. Newspaper articles and TV shows in Russia began to produce questionable stories, all involving Grigori. They began saying all those certificates and diplomas weren't real. They claimed he was fake in everything he said and did. News agencies questioned everything Grigori said. The problem these agencies found was people didn't jump off a cliff simply because the authorities said they should. These people began doing some reading on their own, and they discovered the fake news on Grigori was just that, fake. Not wanting a crisis go to waste, the news media began saying that Grigori had said if the people living in Beslan would pay him an undisclosed amount of money, he would bring the dead children back to life. They based this on the October 27, 1995 conversation involving plans for nuclear and environmental safety on the planet, human life extension, and an end to dying. Sokolov Mitrish called the followers of the teachings of Grigori a sect in his articles. Many times he affirmed that the adherents of the sect offered some citizens of Beslan they would bring children back from the dead for 39,000 rubles. That sounds like a lot, but it comes to about $550. I had to look up how much people made on average in Russia. They make about $450 a month. That is today's dollars. Back in 2004, you might have been looking at 2 months' wages to resurrect your kids. There was no evidence of Grigori being involved in any effort to con folks out of their money. There was no evidence of anyone trying to do this in his name. It looks as if the government in Russia was desperate to get this man out of the way so they could continue running things, even if at the expense of their citizens. False information released by Sokolov-Mitrish was taken up by other mass media. Newspapers and TV channels began calling Grigori Grabovoi a swindler and a sectarian. They said he had received money for the resurrection of children in Beslan. Journalists and TV hosts ignored the truth and ran with the idea Grigori was guilty. The principle of presumption of innocence doesn't exist for the mass media mentioned above. In accordance with Part 1, Article 49 of Constitution of Russian Federation, everyone who is accused of committing a crime shall be considered not guilty unless his fault is proven in accordance with federal law, order, and determined by a court verdict, which has come into legal focus. Mass media also violated Articles 17, 21, and 44 of the Constitution of Russia, Article 10 of the European Convention on the Protection of Human Rights and Main Freedoms. In spite of the fact that law enforcement bodies didn't bring an indictment against Grigori, newspapers and TVs went on spreading false information about the so-called committed crimes in the form of receiving money connected to the folks in Beslan. Remember Richard Jewell, the Centennial Olympic Park bombing in Atlanta, Georgia, July 27, 1996? The blast killed one person and injured 111. Richard Jewell was a security guard at the concert. He spotted the suspicious-looking package, and he began moving people away from it just before detonation. Some FBI agent decided that Jewell had planted the bomb so he could become a hero. Jewell was named as a person of interest, although he was never arrested. His home was searched, his background exhaustively investigated. He became the subject of intense media interest and surveillance, including a media siege of his home. They said he was under investigation for his crimes. Evidence against him was dubious at best. In October, Jewell was fully cleared of all responsibility in the bombing, especially considering somebody else was already blamed for it. Being found guilty by the media will ruin a person who is innocent since never being found guilty. Many news agencies consider this standard procedures. Print the accusations in huge black letters on page 1, but place the retraction on page 20 in small print. As some of the women who had lost their children in Beslan tragedy learned about speculation on the death of their children from the newspaper and TV talking heads. They learned about Grigori Grabovoi for the first time from these very newspapers and TV shows. In August 2005, some of these women traveled to Moscow and made a declaration that any and all information about payment for the promise to resurrect their children was false. According to them, neither Grigori nor any of his disciples came to their city offering to bring their children back from the dead for any amount of money. No offer was ever made to do anything for the citizens as far as resurrecting people. These women said the first time they ever heard of Grigori was when the newspapers mentioned his name in regards to their accusations. No one had ever received money for resurrection of children in Beslan. You can find testimonies and video recordings of these interviews at www.drugg.ru. Well, the website is in Russian, so be careful which tabs you click on, and have your Russian translation polished up because, well, the interviews are all in Russian. Journalists from a newspaper came to the rescue of their colleagues with a scheme to find evidence even if there was none to be had. When they can't find the truth, they'll simply make some up. A journalist named V. Vorsobin, along with a lot of help from his colleagues, constructed a photo robot, or what we would call a photo composition, using computer graphics to create a lifelike image. This was followed up in September 2005 when the journalist signed up to take a course of individual training conducted by Grigori Grabovoi. Part of the class was included in a digital video. The journalist paid 39,000 rubles to attend the class. They were going to teach him how to use the numerical method called Rung-Kut. The Rung-Kut method, just like Euler method and midpoint methods. The Rung-Kut method is a numerical method which starts from an initial point and then takes a short step forward to find the next solution. I am not a mathematician. They have their own language. I read several definitions of Rung-Kut and I got more confused by each one. There is something to do with healing and numbers, but I'll get to that in a bit. Vorsobin took part in the seminar. After the seminar, he had a personal meeting with Grigori. During this meeting, Grigori passed the CD through a device that activated it. This had something to do with the healing by numbers process. Vorsobin showed the composite photo to Grigori and asked about resurrection. After the seminar and meeting, Vorsobin received a video cassette with the recording of the seminar he had attended so he could watch it later on at home and redo his training. He also received a certificate stating that he had attended the class and had passed the exam. Once back at his office, Vorsobin published a news article saying he had used Grigori's method to resurrect a CGI image. In this article, Vorsobin accused Grigori of swindle in the form of receiving money for resurrection of a CGI photo. He then printed an article saying how I tried to imprison Grabovoi, which was published on December 1st, 2005. In this article, the journalist bragged that he had submitted a sworn statement about being swindled to law enforcement officials. He based his accusations on the payment for resurrection of the CGI photo. Vorsobin was later informed that legal proceedings were not instituted based on the facts he had cited. The Office of Public Prosecutions confirmed this information. In accordance with Article 159 of the Criminal Code of Russian Federation, swindle is a theft of someone's property or an acquisition of a right for someone's property by means of deceit or breach of trust. In accordance with this article, an act could be qualified according to Article 159 swindle if a theft in accordance with Criminal Code of RF theft is a requisition of someone's property without compensation, and deceit or breach of trust are present in the act. A lot of legal mumbo-jumbo that it takes a lawyer to understand. Neither a theft nor neither theft nor deceit or breach of trust was detected. The case of Vorsobin didn't contain corpus delicti. There was no act which could be qualified according to Article 159. Vorsobin had been thoroughly aware of what kind of seminar he was going to attend and who would conduct the seminar. Voluntarily, he had paid the amount determined for participation in the seminar, He hadn't paid Grigori, but he had paid the organization holding the seminar. Versobin took part in the seminar he wanted to attend according to the agreement and for which he had paid. March 20th, 2006, soon after the meeting of the Constitutional Congress, law enforcement agents reacted to the statement of Versobin concerning payment of the resurrection of the CGI photo, and they instituted criminal proceedings against Grigori. According to the procedural criminal law of the public prosecutor, he had the right to institute proceedings only within 30 days after the sworn statement made in 2005. They missed the final date on December 31st for taking action. Susan Dudieva sent a letter saying the charges of swindle was nothing more than an effort by mass media to continue the lies regarding the resurrection of murdered children. She informed the newspaper that in the case they refused to publish an editorial with the retraction of their accusations, and the volume of the retraction should be the same as the volume of slanderous and doubtful information. She said if they refused to print the retraction, she would apply to the courts for legal action of her own. In other words, she was going to sue the newspapers. The newspapers ignored the letter, and they refused to publish her letter, which was contrary to regulations of federal law regarding mass media. When Grigori was imprisoned, the mass media renewed their slandering and their speculations, playing with the feelings of people. They again used reporting about Breslin tragedy. The TV stations showed images of Grigori walking into the police station in handcuffs, and they pretty much stated that he was guilty. I hear reporters in the U.S. use the term alleged all the time. The funny thing is they continue using the term long after the trial has concluded and the perpetrator is in prison. Once it has been proven in court, it's no longer alleged. It might not be correct, but the allegations have been shown to be correct. I have heard some journalists say that Charles Manson was the alleged mastermind in the Sharon Tate murder, even though he pretty much did it. They distribute slander about the political party Grigori had formed as well. According to Article 129 of the Criminal Code of Russian Federation, slander is distribution of deliberately false information which blackens the honor and dignity of another person or undermines their reputation. The press and probably the government was out to get Grigori no matter what. July 7th, 2008, Tagonsky Court in Moscow found Grabovoi guilty of 11 counts of large-scale fraud and sentenced him to 11 years in prison. According to the court sentence, Grabovoi organized a pyramid scheme, convincing his followers to collect money from the parents of the dead children and then pay him 10% of the profits. The court had no evidence to proceed with the trial, but they had gone ahead anyway. A group of Russian advocates, including Mikhail Tepeshkin, brought an action instituting criminal proceedings against Vladimir Putin and President Medvedev in front of the United Nations, the Hague Tribunal, and the International Criminal Court for having effected Grigori's criminal prosecution. Grabovoi was granted early release May 2010. The government is still trying to overthrow his release, but he's out on his own. There are 52 political parties in Russia. The only reason I can see for the government to go after Grigori with so much prejudice is they must have feared his party was going to gain enough power to push them out of Moscow. On the website, they say this about Grigori and his teachings. The main value of the teachings of Grigori Grabovoi is that it allows mankind to rescue as well as to free itself from the biggest error, the myth about the existence of the objective physical reality that doesn't depend on consciousness, because only consciousness creates the world. If we don't think it, it doesn't exist. Everything which exists all around the earth, the sun, the stars, space, the whole world, everything is based on the structure of the consciousness, which includes the Creator's consciousness. Therefore, if we know what spirit is, what consciousness is, we can revive people. We can create space and we can build the world. We can do every inventive action. And now for that thing about the numbers and healing. Grabovoi numbers use radionic signatures to heal various health ailments. They were developed using his radionic machine. A radionic instrument, also called electromagnetic therapy treatment, is a form of alternative medicine that says disease can be diagnosed and treated by applying electromagnetic radiation, such as radio waves, to the body from an electronically powered device. If this sounds like quackery, just think ultrasound machines and MRIs, the things that are used today for diagnosis and treatment. For those who don't know, radionic therapy and practice is the concept that man and all life forms share a common ground in that they are all connected to each other within the electromagnetic field of the earth, and that all life forms carry its own electromagnetic field, which, when sufficiently distorted, will result in disease and sickness. Accepting that all is energy, radionics sees organs, disease, and remedies as having their own particular frequency or vibration. These factors can be expressed in numerical value, or rates, in a form of geometric patterns. These numbers provide the means by which the practitioner can identify and treat disease at a distance. With this in mind, Grigori Grabovoi would use his radionic machine to pinpoint the numbers associated with various health conditions, then instruct his clients to meditate on these numbers, resulting in recoveries. The website says, the protocol is designed to instruct your neo, or new, unit to utilize quantum entanglement and open up a temporal portal, bringing your body in tune with the best astrological time period to manifest the DNA changes. The next step is to instruct your neo to take holographic stem cells, or virtual stem cells, from your spinal cord and teleport and superimpose them over the area you want to regenerate or alter. While doing this, visualize a sphere of white-silver color in front of you, and within this sphere visualize your chosen Grabovoi number. Then instruct your soul to begin healing and integration. Lastly, transform this sphere with your Grabovoi number into your body's solar plexus, or the pineal gland, and ask your higher self to initialize cellular differentiation within the physical realm. Still confused? Well, here's the step-by-step process to simplify this process. If you want to get this information without having to listen to me over and over so you can write it down, check out the website healthcenterir.webs.com. healthcenterir.web.com. As for the numbers, you can see a list of some of the healing numbers by looking at healthcenterir.webs.com/codes-disease. The whole process is a bit involved. You start with step 1. You recite, device activate and increase. The device is a proprietary machine sold by Dr. Grabovoi. The PRK-1U is sold on his website, but you don't have to buy one. Step 2, wait 30 seconds to 3 minutes in silence. In other words, you sit there and meditate. When you begin to feel tingling sensation in your hands, tell the device, "Device, I trust you completely to heal and integrate my body, mind, and spirit." Wait for the Stargate to appear. When you see it, recite the following phrase: "A Stargate, I trust you completely. Device activate Stargate mode and increase." Step 5. Automatic mode. Okay, there are 17 steps involved, but the good news is you can cut down on the number as you feel like. You don't have to use all of them. You don't have to use any of them. You simply have to focus your mind on what it is you want to fix. There are lots of moving parts, as Ernie would say. You don't have to use the device. You don't need all the steps. You can use the numbers and your mind, but the results are not as rapid or beneficial, but you'll still get results. There are also number codes for things like electronics and toxic invaders. Right now, me and my wife are conducting an experiment here at the house. We've written down certain numbers that are supposed to affect electronic devices. And we have these numbers near our computers and our cell phones. Let's see what happens. I've also ordered one of Grigori's books. It should be here soon, and once I try working on my knee, which hurts all the time, but I don't trust doctors, so, well, I'll let you know how it goes. I have read and I've listened to hundreds of testimonials from people who have used the Grabovoi numbers method for healing, and they all swear that it works. Some of y'all will hear about healing by numbers and say it's all a bunch of hooey. That's your choice. You don't have to believe in Grigori or Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, or even that Jesus healed people. Then again, there will be a few of you who will take this to heart and give it a try. Let me know how the numbers work for you. A lot of what Grigori says has been passed on by other healers. Numerology, for one. I carry a number 8 in my wallet all the time. Some of you will understand that. The idea of the earth being tuned to certain vibrations is nothing new. The idea of frequencies altering your body is used by many people. Just because some guy in a white lab coat doesn't like it, doesn't mean it won't work. I hear folks say all the time, think outside the box, but when you do, people give you a hard time. So, try thinking outside the box. Next time you have an ailment, and instead of rushing to the doctor right off the bat to take some pills and get addicted to something bad for you and then find out that the pills they gave you are carcinogenic substances, try a different form of medicine. I'm not saying don't go to the doctor, but I'm saying don't just go to the doctor. Try thinking outside the box a bit. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I hope it wasn't too confusing. It was confusing to me since a lot of what was said was in different language. If you enjoyed tonight's show, let your friends know. If you didn't, well, sorry about that. Hopefully next Saturday I'll have a much more entertaining show, more to your likes. Until next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murder three? Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.